Okay, so now we're live. I want to welcome all candidates seeking a position of Mayor of New Orleans. All candidates were invited to participate in tonight's forum. Okay. I want to welcome everyone to Voters East of the Industrial Canal Public Candidates Forum for Mayor for the City of New Orleans. A group of concerned voters believed that their voices were not being heard. They also believed that their issues, concerns, and questions were not being addressed within the many PACs hosted forums and debates. As a result, Voters East of the Industrial Canal was established in 2011. Voters East of the Industrial Canal is an organization by voters and for voters that provides an open forum where candidates can holistically engage voters, our citizens who are the true decision makers on election day. Now I'd like to introduce the board of directors. So if you can say your name, I'm going to introduce you and say hi to the candidates. Corinne Villabasso, who
Hello.
is the founder.
Hello. Here.
Myself, Marcia McWilliams, who's the vice chairwoman and co-founder.
Good evening and welcome.
Can we see you, Marcia?
I put myself on video, but
Okay, we'll come back. We have Ed Bluen, our parliamentarian, and who
Good
is the
evening.
co-founder.
Good evening.
We have Philip Reed, who is a co-founder. Somewhere, okay. Well, now I'm going to introduce active committee members. And if you are here, please say hi to the candidates. We have Wendy Beck.
Good evening, everyone.
Shawan Bernard.
Good evening and welcome, and thank you all for joining us tonight.
Tina Haynes. We have Miss Odile Ramsey. And we have Karen Como.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you here with us.
And that was Miss Odile. So welcome to the first evening of our 2025 series of Voters East of the Industrial Canal, Municipal Candidates Forum. Tonight's questions were being solicited and submitted by voters who reside east of the Industrial Canal. At this time, I would like to introduce our moderators for the evening. So now we have Dr. Sion Quiet-Smith and Honorable Kiva Landrum. Moderators.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, good evening. I'm Dr. Sion Quiet-Smith, proud New Orleanian, grew up in Pontchartrain Park, and proud resident of New Orleans East. I'm very grateful and humbled to be a part of this discussion. My background is which would not be surprising to some. My research environmental disasters and threats, and I've combined my years of research in public as well as corporate endeavors to ensure that the many lessons learned from the resilient people of New Orleans is well documented. So thank you again to the voters east of the Industrial Canal for this opportunity to co-moderate.
And good evening. I'm Kiva Landrum. I, too, am a proud New Orleanian, born and raised in New Orleans East and still reside in New Orleans East. I have vast experience in the criminal justice system. I served as an assistant DA, as the DA, and then did some years on the criminal district court bench. I've now transitioned into more of the private sector. I did some private work at a local law firm, and now I serve as the general counsel of the Housing Authority of New Orleans. And so it is my pleasure to serve as moderator for this forum this evening.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, we will get started. I'll just say a few things to remember before we start our opening segment, that again, this is not a debate. This forum is designed for candidates to speak solely to their own platform, vision, your qualifications, and your record. Responses should focus only on what you plan to do, what you have done, and how you intend to lead, and not on your opponent's record, abilities, or actions. We're going to start this evening with introductions of the candidates for mayor of the city of New Orleans in alphabetical order. Candidates, you will have 2 minutes each for this segment. I will call your name, and as I call your name, I ask that you restate your full name for our audience, followed by outlining your strengths, weaknesses, and skill sets, and how you believe these attributes qualify you to effectively serve as mayor of the city of New Orleans. In your introductions, I will also ask that you state your current profession and the number of years in said profession. Candidates, are we ready to begin, or shall I repeat the question?
Ready.
Okay, we will begin with candidate Eileen Carter. Candidate Carter, you can begin your introduction.
Good evening. My name is Eileen Carter, and I'm a native New Orleanian. I am running because we have been asked to be resilient for too many years. It is time for New Orleans to thrive. We've been, when speaking up, and a lot of you know I spoke up in 2022 and 2023 because the will of the people has not been heard. We need youth programming, we need infrastructure, we need safety, we need economic and workforce development, we need public health and affordable housing. But all of this is going to take a community lift. I cannot do this by myself. I was brought up under my father, Ken Carter, who was the first elected Black assessor in the state of Louisiana. I grew up under Bold. I grew up under those giants who set the stage for us. But it's time for us to take the baton and to move it. It's time for us to move forward, and I can do that. I've worked for the city of New Orleans. I've responded to COVID, hurricanes, and cyber attacks. We can do this together. EileenCarterMayor.com.
Thank you, candidate Carter. We will hear next from candidate Collins. 2 minutes for this segment. Okay. Candidate Renata Collins, can you unmute?
She's not present.
Okay, all right. We will move on to candidate Royce Duplessis. You have 2 minutes, candidate Duplessis, for this segment.
I want to start off by saying good evening to voters east of the Industrial Canal and everyone who's watching. My name is Royce Duplessis. I currently serve in the state legislature where I've served for the past 7 years, 4 years in the House, now 3 years in the state Senate. I'm a native of New Orleans. I was born in Gentilly Woods. Pontchartrain Park raised me up. I'm proud to say that this is my home. And when I think about New Orleans East, when I think about everything east of the Industrial Canal, I'm overwhelmed with a sense of nostalgia. This sense of nostalgia is rooted in my grandparents who actually lived in Kenilworth. And I remember visiting them in New Orleans East as a child, attending the movie theater right there in Lake Kenilworth and remembering what it used to be. And as I think about what it will be and what it can be, I've spent 15 years as a licensed attorney, working in various capacities. My journey in public service actually began almost 20 years ago as chief of staff to a New Orleans City councilman in post-Katrina New Orleans. I served as chairman of the New Orleans City Planning Commission. I volunteered with our young people with the Silverback Society. I have worked in private practice as a solo practitioner, and I've also worked for multinational law firms. I have a broad range of experience both in the private sector and in the public sector. And I believe right now, at this critical juncture in our city, we need leadership that is collaborative, leadership that is innovative, and leadership that's going to move us beyond a lot of the chaos and division that I think has stood in the way. We've gotten a lot of promises for New Orleans East and the lower Ninth Ward. I want to be a mayor for this city that's going to be able to deliver, make City Hall functional, make New Orleans affordable, and make the new city of New Orleans a place where we can attract the type of jobs our people deserve, good paying jobs, beyond just the tourism industry. We can do it. New Orleans is an international city, but we're too known for tourism. We have to grow beyond it. And I know that with the right type of leadership in this city right now, we can achieve those goals. I think that might be bringing my time to an end. I look forward to answering further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Gabrielle Harris Thomas. You have 2 minutes for this segment.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gabrielle Harris Thomas. I am a lifelong New Orleanian of 54 years, and I am excited to be in this mayor's race. And I just want to say hello to all of you. I've seen all of you around, and I'm honored to be amongst you guys. Well, I'm running to make change I'm not a politician. I'm just a regular citizen that has experienced just the degrading of the city. I was struggling throughout the last couple of years. That brought me to have to use public transportation. And I work in a French Quarter area, and I walk throughout the sidewalks. And in addition to that, I'm not from the Ninth Ward. However, I have relatives that live in the Ninth Ward. I've been going there since a child. The appreciation of that area as well. And it saddens me that it doesn't get better, that things in that area is just getting worse. The vacant housing in the Ninth Ward area that's been vacant since Hurricane Katrina, the streets with potholes. The kids need more things to do other than go to school in the mornings from 8 to 3. They need extracurricular activities that would assist them in having more productive lives. I would like to be a part of that. I'm a normal citizen who actually experienced all these struggles, and I would make a great mayor because I have experienced the struggles. I don't owe any favors, and I will stand toe to toe with anyone with the Ninth Ward area, along with the entire city, with getting things done. And I'm just here, and I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to assist my Ninth Ward family with change. I'm Gabby. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Candidate Arthur Hunter.
Hey, good evening. I'm sorry. Good evening. I'm Arthur Hunter. And I want to thank the organizers for sending me this invitation. I truly appreciate it. Before I was anything, I was Arthur. I lived at 4930 Rose Drive in the Gap. I played football at Pratt Park. I went to Jefferson Davis Elementary School, Livingston Middle School, Aberson for 9th grade, and then I graduated from St. Aug. And then I became a police officer, a lawyer, and a judge. Look, I'm not going to fill you here with the same old political talk. We have enough of that already. And we know what the serious problems are in the East, and we know why. But let me make this clear. For the city of New Orleans to realize its full potential, New Orleans East has to realize its full potential. So when I become your mayor, that's where I'm going to start. So I look forward to answering your questions and talking about solutions.
Thank you. Candidate Frank Robert Janusa. You have 2 minutes for this segment.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here tonight. This is my first run for public office. I'm a native-born son of the city, third generation from immigrants who came off the boat at the Port of New Orleans in the 1890s. I'm a licensed CPA from the age of 21 until today at the age of 73. 52 years of service to local businesses, tax preparation, tax planning, and a variety of high-level financial endeavors. I was born in Mid-City on St. Philip Street, where my relatives numbered 20 to 25 in a span of 2 blocks in that city, where we grew up as if we were a small village. I attended Holy Rosary Grammar School. I received a full scholarship to St. Aloysius, thanks to the Brothers of the Sacred Heart. And subsequent to that, I received one of the first decennial honor awards, a 3-year scholarship to LSUNO. I was born here, grew up here, and I stayed here. Even after Katrina, I couldn't wait to get back home. filling my own potholes on my street until 2020. My desire for this city is to bring the neighborhoods together and at the same time make City Hall work for the people. I also want to bring economic development. Yes, I'm running as a Republican, a proud Republican. And I think the fact that I am a Republican, I can actually bring funds from Baton Rouge through Jeff Landry and from Washington, D.C. through the Republican Congress and perhaps even President Trump. That is an exciting venture, and I look forward to this.
Thank you. Candidate Helena Moreno, you have 2 minutes for this segment.
Great. Thank you all. And it's great to be with all of you all tonight. And good afternoon, I guess good evening to the voters east of the Industrial Canal. And thank you all so much for having us. I'm Helena Moreno, and I'm running for mayor because I believe that you deserve more. I believe that you need a 24/7 leader, a 24/7 leader who is going to stop at nothing to make sure that you get the city services that you deserve, and not just when there's Taylor Swift coming to town or a Super Bowl. But it should be the standard, not the exception. And that's what you're going to get with me. And let's be honest, and I know that we all know this, and you all definitely know this, that for far too long, New Orleans East and the Ninth Ward has been ignored. Even when we have these big events coming to town, New Orleans East and the Ninth Ward still gets ignored. But I have good news, and that good news is that that will end when I become mayor. Because when I become mayor, I'm not just coming to you with a bunch of words, I'm coming to you with a real plan. A real plan that includes having members of my team, members of my administration, solely focused on New Orleans East and the Ninth Ward, solely focused on making sure that you have the right level of development, that you have the right level of business retention and business recruitment, that you ultimately have your quality of life needs finally being met. And look, for those of you all who have worked for me or work with me for quite some time, I know many of you who are part of this group, you know how I operate and how I get things done. And you also know my background. I've been ultimately in the public eye here in the city of New Orleans for over 25 years now. I was a journalist back in my early 20s at WDSU, and that's really where I, so much learned to operate with the standard that I still hold true of fairness, accountability, and transparency. And I look forward to answering the rest of your questions.
Thank you. Candidate Tyrell Morris.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you to the organizers of the forum tonight, and also good evening to the other candidates. My name is Tyrell Morris, and I'm running for mayor of the city of New Orleans. For me, it's very simple, right? I am an inner city project kid that came from a family that was in the system, and I ultimately worked my way through to build a life for myself that I have today. I have worked for city government in many different cities, and New Orleans, of course, has my heart. This is my home now. I have a master's degree, and I've studied both public administration and hospitality management. I believe I have the skills necessary to marry those two things that our city does well to really form a government that works for its people, a government that operates that makes sense. A lot of the candidates have worked with me closely on various different issues, and although we may be applying for the same job, we collectively have celebrated some incredible wins together, and I will forever be grateful for those opportunities. My plan is very simple. It's a government that is accessible. It is a government that is not unreachable, or one that is so entrenched in regulation that the people who need it the most don't hear from it. My journey in city government here in New Orleans is I was a former director of the Orleans Parish Communication District, home of New Orleans 911 and 311. I had a 6-year stint there as a director, and I would say 5 of those years were really, really good and productive. The last year seemed to be met with some challenges, but I think anyone in our careers have ups and downs. It's more so how we respond to those. And for me, this campaign is an opportunity for me to demonstrate how I will govern. I will govern with the spirit of discernment. I will govern with the spirit of collaboration. And no matter where you fall, if you have an interest in moving the city forward, there will always be a seat at the table for you. My plan talks about increasing transportation opportunities, particularly in the lower Ninth Ward and New Orleans East, to connect our people to opportunity. It also talks about emergency services for
And
families.
that will be
So thank you
time.
all much. My name is Tyrell Morris. I'm running for mayor.
Thank you. Next, candidate Oliver Thomas, and you have 2 minutes for this segment.
First of all, I want to thank this organization for the opportunity again to interview with you guys, and especially to place the vital importance on an area that has given so much to me and my family. I could spit out a lot of the addresses where I live: 5444 Robinson, 1328 Andrew Street, 1432 Caffin Avenue, 1428 Egania, 4783 Mark. Those are places I live in New Orleans East or in the Lower Ninth Ward. I'm proud of that community. I think it's the only community where this city can grow and where we have opportunity to expand and diversify our economy. I was proud to make sure and to advocate to Nike had their Super Bowl experience in New Orleans East for the first time after all the years we had Super Bowls. Gordon Ramsay did his show, International Chef Show, from a restaurant where this time in New Orleans East at the Verdict Lounge. Ian McNulty has highlighted Ty Nola, New Orleans Brothers, and Ito's in several restaurants. So we're getting the kind of recognition that we deserve. I'm also proud to be a husband, father, grandfather, my kids, my grandkids, Sage and KJ, but also extremely proud of the fact that New Orleans East is being talked about now. I never forget, I wrote a piece about the stereotyping and many of what folk were doing to unfairly label New Orleans East. They got 1 million reads. They haven't done that with other communities. So when you talk about one of the most vibrant communities in this city, I'm extremely proud to represent it. 95% of my family live and own property in that area, and it deserves a mayor that doesn't consider it on the other side of the Industrial Canal or on the other side of the high rise. When they put that hole in that Industrial Canal and started digging in 1918 and finished in 1923, it was to add a piece to New Orleans, not to subtract. When they built that high rise and they closed the old Almanaster Bridge, that me and my family.
Thank you.
Let's add it back. Let's go, NOEs.
Thank you. Thank you all for your introductions and your participation. I will now turn the virtual mic over to my co-moderator, Kiva Landrum.
All right, good evening. Thank you. And so now we're going to get into the questions. And so our first topic is going to be about business sustainability in New Orleans East. New Orleans East has experienced more business closures and relocations than new openings, even as national trends show growth in business and job centers. Neighboring parishes are attracting investment through reprogramming efforts, with some businesses choosing to relocate or expand outside of Orleans Parish altogether. Meanwhile, District E's population is growing, not declining, and now represents approximately 21% of the city's total population. And so the question is, if elected mayor, what specific funding strategies will you implement to support business retention, attract new job centers, and stabilize economic development in New Orleans East? And so we'll start in reverse alphabetical order. Candidate Oliver Thomas, you're first, and you have 1 minute to answer this question.
Well, one of the things I'll do is continue to advocate, make sure that we have banks and investors, grants for startup businesses and entrepreneurs. If New Orleans East offers us the most vast opportunity to grow and diversify our economy, then the business community, the chamber, the Regional Black Chamber, and all of our titans in business and industry ought to be partnering to make sure we can take advantage of that. The God isn't making any new land. The land is already in New Orleans East. But the other thing I'll continue to do is advocate for that community. Why aren't we leading with the conversation, talking about New Orleans East is leading in overall violent crime reduction now? The police chief has consistently said that. Pash Patel, who's one of the owners, Ms. Landrum, Judge Landrum, of the Marriott Express, I talked to him a week ago, and he said, we invested in New Orleans East because we saw crime going down, because we saw the vast opportunity. But he also asked me a question. He said, why is there so many negative comments online of people trying to put the East down? It will ultimately affect our bookings. He said, we see the East as an opportunity, not as a place of stagnation and not having growth.
Thank you. And so next we'll ask that question, and please let me know if you need me to repeat the question, of candidate Tyrell Morris.
Thank you, Judge. Look, in order to attract business to New Orleans East in the Ninth Ward, we have to make it attractive, right? If you drive through those neighborhoods now on our major thoroughfares, it's not really an environment we can be proud of. The grass is barely cut, there's trash all over the place, transportation in and out of the area is difficult. All those things that make a community vibrant and attractive for economic development, we don't have. So it's going to take the administration to make sure that we don't miss, that we are aggressive in our blight reduction in those neighborhoods, that we ensure transportation is on time, it's reliable, and it's comfortable. But we also make sure that the broken windows theory is applied there, that we clean up the streets, that we clear the areas the city is responsible for first. I can't believe we're levying fines on people for the property conditions when they own city facilities look just as bad. And so from my administration's perspective, we will make it attractive versus visually, but also infrastructure wise, that the machines that keep a neighborhood going will continue to go like a well-oiled machine.
Candidate Moreno.
Thank you, Kiva. So my business retention and recruitment plan for New Orleans East ultimately starts with building up our economic development office to include within it a team that solely is going to focus on New Orleans East, making sure that they're talking to businesses who are there and making sure that they're doing everything possible to keep those businesses, but then also taking a look at what else is happening as to how we can recruit new businesses coming into New Orleans East. And my plan also includes moving a satellite city hall office over New Orleans East to provide city services right in New Orleans East. And having that city hall annex will also bring additional amenities to New Orleans East. But a key piece to my plan also includes putting city-owned properties and parcels back into commerce. We have hundreds of properties just in New Orleans East alone that the city owns, and nothing's happening with that. I'll make sure to get those back into commerce. And when it comes to blight as a whole, code enforcement and blight eradication is going to be one of my top priorities, because that alone will make New Orleans East so much more attractive.
All right, and candidate Janusa.
Thank you for the question. The concern that I have about New Orleans East is that it is undeveloped for reasons which are unable to be determined. Vast amounts of land there. New Orleans East has the 3 R's. It's got rail, it's got road, and it's got the river. Somehow, the economic development department in the city needs to mesh those 3 elements together so that they can become the economic engine. One of the things which would be interesting will be the new commuter system of the rail system between New Orleans and the Gulf Coast, Waveland, Bay St. Louis, Biloxi, all the way to Mobile. We need to develop that system with the people's desires in mind to take a day trip to the Gulf Coast. And obviously, rails go both ways. People from Mobile coming into New Orleans, enjoying our food, our culture, and everything else that's important. We need also to redevelop certain other areas.
Thank you. Candidate Hunter.
The first thing we have.
I think you're on mute. You may want to check your mute.
You're on mute. Yeah, you go. Thank you, Judge. Well, first, look, we have to do the basics, which means we have to make it safe. And we have to have a clean infrastructure, which means the streets have to work. But we also have to support those businesses and find out what they want and what they need on Morrison, on Chef, on Lake Forest Boulevard, on Reed, Crowler, Bullard. Find out what those businesses need and be the support that they need. Because one of the things I want to do is make sure those businesses become business enterprises and become better. That's what we need to do. And the fourth thing is this: we should have to do business and not be able to go through the mayor's person first. So we have to end that political corruption. That's the way we're going to move the East forward.
Thank you. Candidate Harris Thomas.
Yes. what I would like to do is establish a committee with just the Ninth Ward residents. And after I establish that committee, I will hear what they would want to start off with first, and which could be getting the properties together. I mean, it's a lot of room out there, and it looks like the swamps. It looks like an extension of the swamp tour in a lot of areas. I definitely want to clean up those properties. I would like to work with the residents there with their kids, helping them advance their quality of life with better schooling, after school programs, whereas the neighborhood would be safer. I will also like to make sure before we invite any out of town developers, any other out of town business owners, that there are people in the community that would like to open businesses first. I will give that opportunity to them. That's
Okay,
their
so,
home.
well, thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Okay.
Candidate Duplessis. Do you need me to
Thank you.
repeat? You're good with
Yes,
the
no,
question?
look, the first thing is that we have to work on narrative. We have to change the way we talk about New Orleans East if we're going to attract businesses. The way we talk about things is often a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, I started off in my opening remarks talking about the nostalgia of going to the Kenilworth Mall or the Kenilworth Theater or the Plaza growing up as a kid. Look, the reality is we may never be able to relive that. The neighborhood's changed, the economy has changed, but if we think towards the future and how we help small businesses come to New Orleans East, just yesterday I went and visited a small business on Lake Forest in Bundy, the Sweet Tooth Fairy. She was telling me about some of the challenges that she's facing. It is unacceptable what we have dealt with in New Orleans East in terms of not being able to attract businesses. We need to be creative, think about tax increment financing districts. We need to think about some of the other incentives that are given to businesses in other parts of the city. Why are we not talking about these things in New Orleans East? We have to do the basics right: cleanliness, efficiency, keeping crime down, but also understanding that New Orleans East and the Lower Ninth Ward is not one neighborhood. Each neighborhood has its own unique characteristics. Each neighborhood has its own unique charm and needs, and we have to be able to respond to those things. But the reality is this: the mayor has to be someone that's going to put excuses aside, that's going to bring in people that's serious about investing in New Orleans East. And all I see is opportunity in the East. We have an opportunity to grow in terms of logistics, distribution. If we focus on what I've talked about, my support being, well, I think that's my time.
Huh?
Thank you.
Don't mute. Okay.
Thank you. And Candidate Carter.
Thank you so much. I want to just follow up with the last question. I am a business, I have a business development firm, and I'm a strategist, and I opened that firm in 2012. So I've been doing it for 13 years. But to jump into New Orleans East, oh my goodness, I'm 46, y'all. I grew up when I was sitting at the ice rink, sipping orange Julius, watching people, ice skate. And then when my mom would go shopping, I would be walking around trying to see who was at the plaza. So that's how I grew up in New Orleans. And I grew up in New Orleans was a family of neighborhoods. And that's really what the East was. It was a family of neighborhoods. And I think the East needs some love in all the capacities that you've already heard. But, the East has had neglect in infrastructure, transit, public safety, environmental with regard to blight and the tires. They've had economic disinvestment, a food desert, and retail just voids. And so when I worked at LEMSDC, I have a family member who's a developer. So I worked with businesses and small business, corporations and small businesses, and I matched them. That's what I did for LEMSDC for 2 years under a grant program, and it worked wonderfully. I think we can get some more of those things and bring those things to New Orleans East.
Okay.
But I do
So-
have some ideas for New
No, your
Orleans.
time is up. So we're going to move on to the
Gotcha.
next one.
Okay.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's shift gears, and I appreciate each of you for your responses. And so now we want to move into the category talking about strengthening New Orleans East hospital services. The hospital in New Orleans East continues to operate below full capacity. resulting in limited service availability and delayed emergency response. The question is, with 1 minute to respond, with over 156,000 residents in districts D and E and a need to serve neighboring communities, what are your concrete commitments to expand services at New Orleans East Hospital, especially in light of federal health care cuts? And so we're going to start and go in alphabetical order. Candidate Eileen Carter, you're up first. You're on mute.
Can you hit the end of that question for me again? Just that last piece.
What are your concrete commitments to expand services at New Orleans East Hospital, especially in light of federal health care cuts?
Number one, we need to have conversation. Me in the audio tonight, I apologize. First, we need to have conversation with our partners. You know, so many of us are really expecting that we're going to have a hostile environment with the new transition. I am running no party, so I feel that I can have conversations and meet at the table with anybody. I've done that with the recall. I worked with Democrat, Republican, non-party, independent, Green Party, Libertarian, everybody. We need to come to the table and we need to find resources. We need to have conversations with the experts. What is going on? How can we bring these resources? I'm going to be honest. I don't know everything, and everybody up here does not know everything. That is why in the first 90 days, what I'm going to do is have an evaluation of everything, every department, including what is going on in New Orleans East. I want to report from, and I'm going to have a special committee, kind of like one of someone else was speaking, but I want to have a special committee to see what the needs are. I do not believe the residents of New Orleans East have been heard. I want to hear them before I make that decision.
Thank you. Candidate Duplessis.
Absolutely. So I just want to begin by stating that I was actually born at New Orleans East Hospital. At the time, it was known as Methodist Hospital. I am proud to say that. We know the struggle that New Orleans went through, in particular New Orleans East, to get that hospital rebuilt after Hurricane Katrina. We know the fight that it took because they said New Orleans East couldn't sustain a hospital. And we continue with that fight now almost 20 years post-Katrina, where New Orleans East has to continue to make the case as to why we need that hospital. And not only do we need it, we have to continue to make it sustainable. Along with my colleagues from the Orleans delegation, I want to say a special shout out to Representative Jason Hughes, who has been a fierce leader in making sure that New Orleans East Hospital received its just due. They have great leadership under Dr. Takesha Davis, and we're going to stay united as a community to make sure that New Orleans East Hospital is not mistreated. We've invested a lot of money at the state level into ensuring that there's appropriate capital outlay funds put towards growing the OBGYN unit at the hospital. That's a big step. And we're going to continue to make steps to make sure that the needs of the people of New Orleans East are met and that New Orleans East Hospital is not treated second tier.
Thank you. Candidate Harris Thomas.
Repeat that question for me again.
With over 156,000 residents in districts D and E and a need to serve neighboring communities, what are your concrete commitments to expand services at New Orleans East Hospital, especially in light of federal health care cuts?
So I'm not a politician. I really don't know certain stuff. I'm just mirroring something that Ms. Carter said about that. Mm-hmm. However, whatever Washington has, that will, as long as we're within compliance of what Washington is doing, so we can get the funding, I would definitely go along with that. And that would mean that we would serve our citizens that are here. I will also implement, whereas our high schoolers would take different medical classes, whereas they can do the internship at the hospitals, which will lighten the load for the professionals that are there. And that will also create maybe, they will also like to create, staying in that field, being professionals in that particular field. But whatever what money that Washington is going to allocate to us to those hospitals, I will make sure that we are within compliance. So all of our 9th Ward residents will receive services. And that's my answer. I don't hear anything.
If you will go to mute, and next we have candidate Hunter with the question. Thank you.
Yes, look, New Orleans East Hospital is one of the assets in New Orleans East, and it has to expand its footprint. You know, right now, if you're about to deliver your baby in New Orleans East, you have to go to Two Road Hospital, you know. And so I want to bring LCMC, which has the management contract to run New Orleans East, to the table and ask them, what do they need from the next mayor? What resources do they need? And who can we partner with other medical professions to expand that footprint around New Orleans East Hospital? Because I remember when Methodist Hospital was there, you had a number of offices on Reed, on Lake Forest Boulevard, all related to medical issues. We need New Orleans East Hospital to do the same thing.
Thank you. Candidate Janusa.
Concept of collaboration between the varieties of healthcare institutions in the city of New Orleans needs to take place. Unfortunately, most of these medical institutions operate as silos, either as silos of education, silos of medical distribution of medical components, and also they tend to be very discreet in what they do. Hospitals make lots of money. They really do. And they need to reallocate some of those resources. Maybe the LSU Health Center and Tulane's medical units can work with LCMC, bring about some change, bring about some collaboration, which is something that they don't do. And then again, the question is, as a Republican, perhaps I can bring some of those funds to the local hospitals from Washington and perhaps even from Baton Rouge. It's not an impossibility.
Thank you. Candidate Moreno. And do you need me to repeat the question? Or are you good?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Kiva. First, let me just say that my plan when I become mayor includes putting in place a really strong intergovernmental relations team. Let me tell you what this team is supposed to do. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened during this administration, but what a good intergovernmental relations team does is it makes sure that the mayor, the council, the legislators on the state side, and our congressional delegation, that we're all on the same page on what the city of New Orleans needs. And then we all collaboratively go and get it. And so that is what I would put in place. And so we would get with LCMC, we would get with our congressional delegation, we would get with our state legislators, with our council members, and all collectively work to make sure that the New Orleans East Hospital and LCMC was meeting the needs of the people in New Orleans East. No doubt about it. When it comes to maternal and birth outcomes in the city of New Orleans, we are ranking currently in F. But I will say this, one thing that is positive though, is we are a city with a very robust health department. In fact, the most robust city health department in the state. So we can use the efforts of Dr. Avegno in our health department and a strong IGR team to deliver for New Orleans East. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Morris.
Hey, thank you again for the question, Judge. You know, so when I talk to residents in New Orleans East, I ask them, why do we not access New Orleans East Hospital as the primary source of healthcare? And the bottom line reality is they believe they can get higher quality care somewhere else. And me personally, I personally have gotten treatment at New Orleans East Hospital and had an incredible experience. Dr. Davis has turned that place around. We need to help get the message out. But also one thing I find very strange that I haven't seen in any other city is that when you call 911 for an ambulance, we give patients the choice of where they want to go, right? Everywhere else, you go to the nearest emergency room. And for some reason, we take an ambulance out of service for 2 hours just to travel because that's where the patient is most comfortable. I'm not saying take away patient choice. We need to understand why the patients that live in New Orleans East don't have the preference to go to New Orleans East. It's a specialty they need not there. I also think we need a trauma center in New Orleans East because if you have an episode of trauma, you got to go to UMC. And so I do think we have to expand capacity a bit if you want New Orleans East healthcare to be parallel to where you can get it in the rest of the city.
Thank you. Candidate Thomas. And do you need me to repeat the question or?
No, not at all. I started working on this piece right away. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Davis and Dr. Robinson and the professional staff there. They've worked hard and they've done a wonderful job. One of the things I want to do as mayor, and this is why a mayor is important, sit down with other systems about services that we can coordinate with New Orleans East Hospital or deliver there. Sit down with philanthropists and investors. Do what Joe Cannizzaro and Alden McDonald did with the center there to deal with diabetes. Let's get more people investing there. But a couple of years ago, one of the things I did was I got Dr. Charles Mouton and other experts on the phone with the behavior department at SUNO, with the nursing department at Dillard, to talk about a teaching hospital or a research hospital around African-American chronic illnesses. Well, guess what? New Orleans East is one of the largest African-American municipal districts. What better place to start in research chronic illnesses there? Xavier decided to go with Ochsner. So that pretty much that plan that we put together 2.5 years ago didn't work. But also personally, guys, this is important to me. The hospital stabilized my mom. It saved my nephew's life. And guess what? It's where I've gone.
Thank you. And so now I'm going to turn it over to my co-moderator.
All right. Thank you. And a quick announcement for our viewers and audience. The poll is now open. The poll will close after the forum ends. However, viewers, now you have an opportunity to rate each candidate's performance using the link that has just been placed in the chat. The poll results will be shared at the end of the forum and posted on Voters East of the Industrial Canal's social media platforms. So again, to our viewers in the chat, there's a link for the poll and you can begin to participate. Now for the next question, which will be related to the proposed pedestrian bridges in New Orleans East. This is the question, and again, you have 1 minute to respond. What is your position on the pedestrian bridges being proposed in New Orleans East? How will you assess their necessity, funding, and value to the community? And we will start with candidate Hunter.
I think you quit. Look, this is simple. No. I want to look at those funds and find out what else we can do with those funds. Maintenance of the neutral grounds, sidewalks, any infrastructure that needs to be done as well. So my answer is no. I'm against it.
Okay. Candidate Harris Thomas.
I am a walker, so I definitely agree with that taking place, with them adding that walkway as an addition to the bridge. But of course, first we have to make sure that safety is in place, things are done properly, is not patched up, so some money could be placed somewhere else. All the money that would be allocated for that would be solely allocated for that, for those walkers. A lot of people walk back and forth to work. A lot of people walk back and forth to the grocery store. Okay. So I definitely think that would be a great asset to the area, and I'll make sure that those fundings that is for that particular project will be for that particular project. And that's it.
Thank you. Candidate Duplessis.
Mm-hmm.
Look, while it's great to receive federal money, state money, or any type of money for that matter, it's always good when you have something to spend it on. But what's not good is spending it against the will of the residents. If the residents don't want these bridges, I would not support these bridges. We want to make the Lincoln Beach project more accessible. We want to create accessibility and walkability, but it's a pretty fundamental question for me. And all I've ever heard prior to even becoming a candidate for mayor is that the residents along Haynes Boulevard, New Orleans East, are not in favor of the bridge, of the pedestrian bridges. Therefore, I am not. And we would have to be creative in finding other ways to use that money.
Thank you. Candidate Carter.
I'll have to say my opinion is what the residents want, what the people want. And I think that needs to be all of our opinions. You know, I sleep here at 2:30. So the people who are going to be using it, those are the people's voices that are going to be heard. So if they don't want it, then that's the side that I'm going to go on. I believe that I was watching the city council meetings regarding this. Those funds are kind of tight in what they can and can't do. So I believe we're really going to have a little bit of negotiation there. But, you know, do we need it? Is it nice? Yes. But could we have used that in somewhere else, you know, throughout New Orleans East? Absolutely. For Lincoln Beach, you know, they need a bridge there. There's so many things we can do in New Orleans East to bring things back. I believe, like, you know, a East stroll. We can have market fairs. We can have, you know, like they have a French market. Why can't we have one for native New Orleanians? Maybe it should be housed in New Orleans East. We need to think about some new things, and our community members, when we start working together and turn the wheel, it's going to start moving. We'll get some attention. We'll get our neighboring communities to start buying from us, and then we'll bring back that big business, and we can do it together. Eileen Carter. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Candidate Thomas. Candidate Thomas, Oliver Thomas.
You're on mute. He's on mute.
Uh-oh, unmute.
Got it. How about now?
Good.
Well, let me start. First of all, absolutely no. This initiative started actually with the federal funding and request before I became involved. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. You would hope that a bridge would be what Ms. Harris Thomas said. It would lead to some place, a store, a school, a shopping center, but many of these bridges go from one side of the interstate over to neighborhoods that don't offer any type of economic or social assistance. I'm absolutely for the bridge on Haynes that would take people from one side of Haynes Boulevard and safely place them in Lincoln Beach. That's a necessity. We have to do that. But the big, beautiful bill actually may have killed the bridges. What we're hearing now, though, is that we could possibly use the rest of the funding for lighting, striping, pedestrian walkways, and making sure that if people are not walking over a bridge, which we don't want them to do, they can access the service road, they can access some of the thoroughfares safely. We need the money for that.
Thank you. Candidate Morris.
Thank you for the question. I agree with all, I mean, I think we're all in the same accord here, but more importantly, I do think it's important to echo that the residents of New Orleans East have to embrace this amenity with open arms. Otherwise, it will be money just wasted and unspent, not utilized in the way it was designed. Not all money is good money, right? I think we have to have match money with purpose, and every project the city entails have to have a public benefit. So if we cannot articulate what the public benefit is, I think it's very clear that it's not a good use of the tax dollar.
Thank you. Candidate Moreno.
Thank you. Well, I think we're talking about two sets of bridges. One, the ones over the interstate, and the other was the one on Hayne for Lincoln Beach. So the ones on the interstate, I said this already during a council meeting, that I was against this concept of building these bridges, and that I thought that the money needed to be repurposed. But this mayor and this administration said they still wanted to do it. But in my opinion, you know, I think we really need to take a look as to why people are crossing in some of these areas. And some of it actually has to do with our bus routes. So why aren't we rerouting some of our buses so that we're dropping off people in better locations? Now, when it comes to the bridge over in Lincoln Beach, what's so messed up about this situation is that that bridge is still stuck in design, and there's all these issues with that bridge. And so DOTD studies are now being done as to, you know, whether it should be crosswalks or a bridge. But bottom line, it's like Lincoln Beach situations with everything being stuck in design, that has been a significant problem. And when I'm mayor, I'll make sure that stuff gets done and gets done quickly. And we're not going to be receiving federal funding for stuff that we don't want and we don't need.
Thank you. Candidate Janusa.
Concepts of the bridges need to be reprioritized in the city. Times that I've spent in New Orleans East, particularly on Hayne Boulevard, going to the municipal airport, shows that there is going to be an absolute need for the bridge going from Hayne to Lincoln Beach. Part of my platform is the redevelopment of Lincoln Beach. As far as the other one, I think it's not such a good idea. With limited funds, I think we need to listen to the people, find out what they want. But I would bet dimes to dollars that they want a bridge over Hayne to Lincoln Beach. So that's my short answer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll turn it back over to our co-moderator, Kiva Landrum.
All right, and so now our next set of questions will focus on the grain terminal project and the Port of New Orleans expansion. And so the first question is, do you support or oppose the proposed grain terminal project in the Holy Cross neighborhood? Please explain your position and describe what specific actions you would take as mayor within your authority to address or influence this project. And we'll start with candidate Moreno.
Thank you so much. I've already been working with the residents of the Ninth Ward for quite some time on this particular issue. Currently, I cannot support the grain terminal project in the Ninth Ward due to the fact that it's like there was such a lack of information around health impacts, around traffic impacts, around the rail impacts for those neighbors that I'm just not satisfied that this is the appropriate project at all in the Ninth Ward. So I've been working with neighbors. I've been working with, obviously, talking to some of the port leadership to see what other options are out there. But that's where the mayor really needs to step in. And as mayor, I would step in and tell the port, it's like, look, there has to be a better spot for this particular type of project because it doesn't have to be here in the Holy Cross neighborhood. In fact, the Holy Cross neighborhood really has an opportunity to thrive, but it's not going to thrive if this project comes.
Thank you. And candidates, I want to remind you, you have 1 minute for this answer. I don't think I said that initially. And so now we'll hear from candidate Morris.
Again, it's similar to the bridges, right? We have to ensure there's a public benefit. Would happen to agree here with Councilman Moreno that I don't think we've done the due diligence here to really come to a firm decision. There's a lot of additional research, especially for a project so large and have such an impact. The amount of public engagement, I'm not satisfied. The amount of just providing education, because sometimes residents don't really understand the impact of the project until it's too late. So we need to really ensure that this has the best public benefit. So as it stands today, no, I don't think that we have circled all the wagons to gain the support for today.
Thank you. Candidate Thomas.
First of all, when I'm mayor, I sit down with the port leadership, state leadership, to come up with a better option. The one good thing about not only that Holy Ghost area, but the other parts of the Lower Ninth Ward, all the way to Florida, from Sister to Dubriel, it's a potential growth area. That area has been coming back. People have been choosing it because it's affordable. Why would we invest in something that may have some environmental concerns, that may have some concerns in terms of the tracks that would have to be laid to run and relay the grain back and forth from the port to their neighborhood? No, that's a negative. But I think if the mayor would sit down, use that bully pulpit, and support those residents, say, look, let's find a better option, a better place where you don't stymie growth, you don't have potential EPA or environmental problems, and we can get a win for everyone. The kind of mayor I want to be is get everyone in the room, let's talk about it, let's work to compromise, let's find better results. But in terms of disrupting the growth and opportunity in that neighborhood, not a good thing.
Thank you. Candidate Duplessis.
First of all, I want to just highlight how I believe the Port of New Orleans is an incredible asset for the city of New Orleans and for the region. However, it's important that we hit reset with the port and neighboring communities. We have to restore trust because there has been a deep deprivation of trust, in my opinion, based on what I've seen. The Alabos project, where the project that we're talking about right now, I have real concerns with. I didn't represent that area, and I don't represent that area in the legislature, but I've watched it and I've talked to residents, and I've even seen images of and seen up close how close this train track is to actual homes that people live in. And look, there are the environmental concerns that have already been raised. There seems to have been some serious issues regarding transparency as it relates to this project, where those local neighbors are rightfully concerned, and I'm concerned as well. So at this time, there would need to be some serious efforts to try to restore the trust between the port and what's happening on that particular project. But we want to do as much as we can to try.
Thank you. Candidate Hunter.
Yeah, thanks. Look, nobody wants to step out their front door and see a train. Nobody wants to step out their front door and expose themselves and their children to unhealthy hazards. Rats going to this grain terminal as well. Nobody wants that in their neighborhood. It wouldn't be happening on St. Charles Avenue, and it wouldn't happen any other place in the city. And with regards to the Port Authority, I want to make sure we have a relationship with the Port Authority, especially when it comes to those skilled trades, and making sure we're working with the Port Authority and working with others to make sure people who live in New Orleans can take advantage of those skilled trades.
Thank you. Candidate Janusa.
I think we have to be very careful about how we assess the neighborhood defects with regard to having rail cars in front of the houses. Evidently, the rails have been there for quite a long time. At the same time, we've got to be concerned about economic development. And economic development means we need to pay attention to these companies, which are frankly out-of-state companies, but they're going to produce jobs. We've got to assess the situation with regard to the possibility of environmental impact, but we've also got to make sure that we bring jobs to the area. New Orleans East, that area has rail, road, and river. We've got to make absolute best use of those assets. And that's my answer.
Thank you. Candidate Carter.
Good afternoon or evening. First, we need to bring transparency to the situation. There hasn't been enough outreach. There hasn't been enough conversation. And that's why we're at the stalemate that we're in. You know, I follow the Stop the Grain online, and I've been very supportive with sharing information and trying to get, you know, our residents educated on it. And I think that is the most important part. When we educate each other and we know what's going on, then we know how to move. And right now, the residents that are living around there are saying, no, we don't want this. And we really need to hear them. But like you said, there is a fine line. And with the growth in the port, and you got to think about it, we are the mouth of the Mississippi River. So much stuff comes right through here and it affects the entire world. So there is a balance that we must have to work with our corporate partners and with our neighborhoods. Because when I grew up, the business community and our neighborhoods had a much bigger partnership, and we need that across the city in every neighborhood. We can build a family of relationships. We can build relationships with our neighbors and our business community.
Thank you. Candidate Harris Thomas.
Okay, well, honestly, I haven't spoke with anyone in the Ninth Ward area about this particular situation. I know a lot of people on the panel, everyone has basically said no, but I need to speak with the residents to see why it's a hard no like that. I haven't spoke with anyone because I don't know how close the railroads will be to the homes. I don't know how close these different entities will be to these different residents. So I need to see what's going on. However, it could be a good idea if it's going to bring jobs to those people in the community. I need to speak with them. Everyone could just be saying no because the neighbor said no, or someone that's influential in their life said no. I need to speak with them first. I need to go around and canvass that area and see why is no and what's the issues with it. And for right now, I just don't have an answer for it. I don't have enough information.
Well, thank you.
I don't hear anything.
Sorry, thank you. I know you previously discussed a little bit in your previous answers about the Port of New Orleans, but this is a more specific question. And it is, what is your vision for the expansion of the Port of New Orleans? Can you speak to any current plans in progress and share any new initiatives you would champion as mayor to shape the port's future? And so we will start with candidate Morris.
Thank you, Judge. I was just having a conversation with some residents yesterday about the particular port and how it looks like this retail opportunities there seem to just be degrading. So I think we need to have a conversation with the port and the mall, the outlet mall there, and see how we can breathe some life back into that space. I would love to see an expansion of the additional cruise lines coming to the city. We seem to, pre-COVID, we're really attracting some new and innovative lines. And a lot of big promises were made. I understand how the pandemic had some people, turn their plans around, but maybe it's time to re-engage that. I also think the port itself needs a little facelift. We welcome a lot of visitors to that city, and I think we can polish the experience of people coming to New Orleans and through the port. But also, I do think there's an opportunity there to expand it a little further down to recreational use, but also just also the overall facelift and giving more amenities inside the Riverwalk Mall, outside of just shopping, but more comprehensive when you're at a cruise port.
Thank you. And candidates, this is 1 minute to answer this question, and we'll go to candidate Moreno.
Thank you, Kiva. While I'm obviously can't support the Alebo Street project right now, I am a huge supporter of the Louisiana International Terminal, which is the LIT project, which you're referring to now. This means thousands of jobs for the city of New Orleans. And let me be very clear that this particular project is critical to us because it's not just about, us getting, even better and better. It's about just New Orleans even just staying competitive in the port market so that we don't continue to get passed up. So really, I'm doing everything possible to make sure that this project gets done, including meeting, of course, with state stakeholders and others to make sure that this happens. But at the same time, I'm already talking to different companies who are really interested on if this LIT project actually does go forward, like we're really pushing and hoping that it does, to invest and come to the city of New Orleans and bring job centers to the city of New Orleans and bring transportation and logistic companies to the city of New Orleans. And that's what a good mayor does. We go and take a look at the opportunity ahead, and then we immediately start recruiting to make sure that the needs are met for big projects like the port.
Thank you. And candidate Janusa.
Port of New Orleans is a very, very vital part of the infrastructure of our city. One of the things that has been done recently is the ability for the city and the port to attract more and more cruise lines. However, if you've ever been on a cruise, the entry and exit to the areas are crowded, they're confused, and frankly, they're just congested. I think the port needs to utilize its asset base to make the visitor experience a lot better, to make the transportation to and from the cruise lines a lot better. With regard to the port as an entity itself, it needs to look to local and state leaders and also needs to look to some of the other ports and see how they're innovating their own infrastructure, particularly the ports on the East Coast. And thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Hunter.
Yeah, thanks. Look, the New Orleans issue corridor is an asset in the East. It has the airport. And look, that's one of the reasons why I helped start the career training program at Delgado and Gino Inc. because of the skilled trades that will be coming because of that port. And so what I want to do when I become mayor, and this is what I will do, I will bring together Delgado, Nunez, New Orleans Career Center, the unions, and other nonprofits who teach career opportunities, make sure our people are prepared for those skilled trades.
Thank you. Candidate Harris Thomas. I think you're on mute.
Yes, I would look at some of the other areas, some of the other ports like Galveston and different and up north to see how they have their ports structured and implemented in ours, the ports that are working. However, I'm 100% for adding more jobs for the residents of New Orleans. I will also invest in, I will also have children from high school and from the colleges to come and be employed there. I would get them proper training to be a part of that experience. However, whatever needs to be done for our citizens to have more jobs and safety, where we could have better quality of life out here, if that would help our citizens, I'm definitely for it.
Thank you. And I just remind all of the other candidates, if it is not your turn to answer the question, if you will please put yourself on mute. And so candidate Duplessis, the question is yours.
Thank you. I want to remind everyone that just over the past few years, probably 4 years, we've lost over 20,000 residents in Orleans Parish alone. People are leaving our city in droves because they can no longer afford to live here. They can no longer afford to live here because we don't have enough good paying jobs. The port is one of our strongest assets. It is how New Orleans came to be. We've neglected it, and it's time to reinvest in it. I support the terminal expansion. This nearly $2 billion project will provide incredible jobs. Currently, the average job at the port is roughly $75,000. Right above those, right on the other side of those walls, is where people like the longshoremen created middle-class living for so many families that benefited from these jobs. And we can go even further, especially when we talk about New Orleans East, being a distribution hub, being a logistics hub. We could do more just to create packaging opportunities for all the products that come in and out of New Orleans on a daily basis, but we're not taking advantage of it. This is our opportunity. This is a critical opportunity for New Orleans, and I strongly support the expansion project.
Thank you. Candidate Carter.
Thank you. I 100% support the expansion project. That's number one. But the river and the port go up and down, right? And so we need to have this conversation regionally. Too many times we're having this conversation in silos, and New Orleans is like, they feel like we're doing it by ourselves. So we need to really sit down with our regional partners, see what we want to do and how we want to expand. Do we want to expand? Yes. What do we want it to look like? Like Mr. Genjusa said, when I was working at City Hall in communications for the mayor's office, I got to go to a lot of events, and one of the more fun ones was the Disney cruise. And so really building that industry is necessary. We need to, you want to come here, have a cruise, and you want them to stay for the weekend. We want to do that. We want to have a more visitor engaged experience, and we can do it. And we, just like they said, we need to clean it up. We need to dust off the whole city. We need to, take a rag and do that across the whole city, graffiti, everything from the top down. And when we do that, and with all stakeholders at the table, we're building a new table in New Orleans, and I'm asking you to join me.
Thank you. Candidate Thomas.
Look, let's get a little granular with this, especially with what's happening with the Panama Canal and its expansion. Our position when you talk about international trade and commerce is extremely important. The port is a very vital part of the city. But I think we can do both. While we respect our longshoremen and our dock workers and those thousands of families that many of us grew up in, we need to make sure the environmental concerns are met. What's going to happen in terms of the study where potentially 1,700 to 2,000 trucks could go through our neighborhoods? How do we have elevated access to thoroughfares so that they don't go through our neighborhoods, so that they're not shaking our houses or destroying our infrastructure? Now, also, my Office of Economic Development is going to deal with the port where we repurpose docks space and space along the port that's not being used. Do we look at the tourism economy? Do we look at creating opportunity there? Do we turn some of that space over to residential communities? So when you talk about a table, what has been my motto? The new residents of New Orleans are not going to have a seat at a table. They're going to help build the table, but there's a lot we can do.
Thank you. And so candidates, I appreciate all of your responses. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to my co-moderator for the next set of questions.
Thank you. Candidates, we will take a turn to address police services. First question, are you committed to expanding 7th District Police Services in New Orleans East by establishing and staffing a 24-hour substation with officers permanently assigned to increase patrol presence in underserved areas, including Village de l'Est, Venetian Isles, Michoud, and Lake Catherine? I will start with this question, candidate Duplessis. And if I need to repeat candidates, please let me know. Candidate Duplessis.
Yes, absolutely. We know for a long time the 7th District has been understaffed in many ways. Response times have not been what they should be, but I know that they've been under great leadership under Captain Wayne DeLarge, who has now moved on to another position. But they've made great strides in the 7th District in New Orleans East. I want to point out the fact that manpower alone is not the answer to achieving the goal of increased public safety. New Orleans is now celebrating, or should at least be celebrating, the fact that we are down in violent crime significantly. We've had the fewest murders that we've seen probably in decades, probably I think in the 50s. And that did not happen purely by increased police presence. That happened through a combination of dedicated resources going towards intervention services and prevention services, a collaborative of the community stepping up to do that work. Look, the reality is, and I was talking with someone with NOPD on this recently, people don't want to become police officers like they once used to. And we have to understand and adapt to that new environment. So we may not be able to achieve the full staffing as we once had, but the reality is we do more intervention and prevention services to try to stop crimes from happening in the beginning. But to answer the question, yes, the answer is absolutely. We want New Orleans East to have all of the services and manpower necessary when incidents.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your response. Candidate Carter.
There's nothing like getting up and reading those major offense logs in the city of New Orleans. And for 3 years, that's what I did. And for so long, you see the response times in New Orleans East just kind of being devastating for the residents. I mean, they're not showing up to the next day, and they have been underserved, and our police have not been listened to. When I was social media manager, we had a lot more engagement. It has waned, and honestly, with the consent decree, part of what we need to do is have more community engagement. And so that's honestly part of what I do. We need to make sure that our police officers have the tools that they need while making sure our residents are covered and their rights are taken care of, but that we have a safe environment so everybody in our neighborhoods can flourish. You know, I grew up when they had the substations and the Calio in the different areas of the city. I really believe we need to bring that back. We need to have the relationships with our police officers. You know, they had a lot of police officers that, you know, you knew them because you went to high school with them. We need to bring back New Orleans. We need to bring back our families. And we do that all together as a community lift. We can bring back the family environment in New Orleans East.
Thank you. Candidate Harris Thomas. And I remind everyone you have 1 minute to respond. Candidate Harris Thomas.
Yes. Could you repeat that question for me, please?
Sure. Are you committed to expanding 7th District Police Services in New Orleans East by establishing and staffing a 24-hour substation with officers permanently assigned to increase patrol presence in underserved areas, including Village de l'Est, Venetian Isles, Michoud, and Lake Catherine?
Okay, yes, I agree with that. I do think I live in the 7th ward, and I've called the police before, and I didn't get anyone there, so I could just imagine what happens in the 9th ward. I just could imagine them calling 911 and not getting anyone at all if they don't mention it's a body or something involved. So I definitely would like the 24-hour police availability back there for the residents to keep them safe. And I would also like the police to engage more with the residents so they don't seem so policey, so authoritative, so they could just be considered like a resident that's just protecting them. So yes, I'm 100% for it. That's my answer.
Thank you. Candidate Hunter.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I'm the only candidate with law enforcement experience. Look, this is a fundamental question for our safety in the NOPD. How do you police a city of 380,000 people with tourists and visitors every day with 850 police officers? But you have to do two things. First, you have to effectively manage the police department. And secondly, you have to do those things to prevent and reduce crime. You have to do them at the same time. And those things to prevent crime is making that neighborhood safe. And what I want to do is have coverage. What I will do is have coverage on the major streets in New Orleans East. And I will ask the state police to do what they do in every other parish. Patrol the state streets, Chef Highway, Hayne Boulevard, and the interstates. That's the only way we're going to be able to have that coverage, because the residents would see it, people would feel safe, the knuckleheads would see it as well. That's how we're going to make New Orleans East safe.
Thank you. Okay. Candidate Janusa?
You know, there's a reason that hospital emergency rooms are open 24 hours a day, because they protect the citizens from accidents, disease, and that's why medical intervention takes place 24 hours a day. Police need to be on staff 24 hours a day, but it must be done with the best utilization of resources. And one of the things that I think is important is to have the use of AI into the police system. Perhaps a course in that at the police academy itself. And more importantly, we need to start the education system in our public school system to indicate that the job of a policeman is not just a job. It's a career, it's a vocation, it's what you do to serve and protect your fellow citizens. Put all that together and it should work.
Thank you. Thank you. Candidate Moreno?
Thank you. Well, my public safety plan actually includes substations in New Orleans East, including getting creative by putting a substation in a grocery store, a new grocery store that I'll make sure gets built in New Orleans East when I'm mayor. But let's also talk about thinking outside the box due to the fact that we've been stuck at roughly 941 police officers, including recruits, for a couple years now. Part of my public safety plan also calls for an outside headhunter recruitment firm to start really going out there and really focusing in on recruitment. But at the same time, we have to keep doing what I called on when Michelle Woodfork was chief, and she and I worked on this together, is getting trained professionals to do the work that commissioned officers don't need to be doing. Like, for example, minor property crimes. You don't need a commissioned law enforcement officer to come out there and deal with that. Let the commissioned law enforcement officers deal with the major emergencies. And at the same time, I'll continue to support initiatives that the city council's been doing, like boosting summer jobs from 250 slots to over 2,000 slots, like making sure we have the culture and youth fund that the city council started with $7 million every year going to organizations doing the work on the ground.
Thank you. Candidate Morris?
Thank you for the question. It comes to the basic reality. The 7th district is just too large. The district, not a substation. We need to separate the 7th district, break it into two different districts with its own separate captain that can service those particular needs. As a 911 director, I would see almost every single night the district with the most amount of calls for service holding having the least available units available for dispatch. It's just basic math. We need to provide more resources as far as the sworn personnel to cover the jurisdiction, but also we need to equip the NOPD with the tools so they can move quickly through that large land mass. My plan calls for an aviation unit for the NOPD to provide some patrol from the air. We understand it's safer, and with our consent decree, it reduces the accidents when our police officers are responding at high rates of speed to crimes and emergencies that are in progress. My plan also calls for recruit housing, as we're to recruit people and attract people into the city. We can provide them a place to live while they're learning about New Orleans and being a member of the New Orleans Police Department. But also, my plan also calls for satellite government centers as well in those areas.
Thank you.
New Orleans East. Thank you.
Candidate Thomas?
Well, first of all, absolutely important to make sure that we break up that district. Ray Charles and every mayor that's ever been could see that we need to break that district up. And I've been saying it for the last several years: land mass times population times calls for service. Too much ground for too few officers in one district to report. But also, when Senator Duplessis talked about change the narrative, if we're just focusing on locking people up and locking kids up, we're missing the boat. Let's expand my after-school program that I have at Dolores Aaron School. Let's re-engage peacekeepers, a group that I've been part of for the last 15 years. I won the Jefferson Award for mentoring. Why? Because I took kids who were failing and I put them on the honor roll. Let's expand beef mediation that I did with Brother Roosevelt and Patrick X and Brother Calvin, where we solved several mediations that didn't end in conflict. Senator Duplessis is right. If we just focus on law enforcement, then it's not going to be sustainable. New Orleans has been the murder capital in 7 different eras. In 1910, Irish and Italian immigrants were slaughtering each other. We need to do more.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Candidates, this next question will revolve around an action agenda. New Orleans East residents often feel physically and politically disconnected from city services not being equal across the city. If elected, what action plan will you put in place within your first 100 days to bridge this disconnect? And you have 1 minute to answer this question, and we will start with candidate Janusa.
You're on mute.
One of the first things we have to do is change the centralization of the government of New Orleans. We've got to broaden it out across all neighborhoods. We need to have satellite city services, not necessarily an entire city hall in New Orleans East or in any other section, frankly. We need to bring the services out there. And that can be done, I think, with limited use of public funds, and at the same time, broaden the perspective of people who can say, oh, gee, I don't have to go downtown on Perdido Street and try to find a parking spot and walk 5 blocks to go to City Hall to check my assessment. I can simply go to the satellite office on Bullitt Road or on Downman or somewhere off St. Claude Avenue before you get to Araby. This would be an exciting addition to the area.
Thank you. Candidate Hunter.
Yeah, look, my first 100 days, I want to make sure that we become a safe city. Because right now, half the people believe they're not safe. And so that means effectively managing the police department, which means it's going to be community policing. And community policing is not doing line dancing on Mardi Gras Day. Community policing means being in that neighborhood, knowing who should be there and who should not be there, and protecting that neighborhood. We're going to fix our infrastructure the right way, which means I'm going to merge sewage and water board and public works. And we're going to have a plan for now and the future on our infrastructure, looking at how much it's going to cost, how it's going to look, how long it's going to take, and how we're going to pay for it. Third thing, I'm going to do things to make living in New Orleans more affordable, especially for homeowners, with homeowners insurance, fortifying roofs, weatherizing homes for people to reduce their utility costs. And I'm going to work diligently to create a skilled workforce in New Orleans. And I'm going to look at NORD, because NORD to me, it's going to be about 3 things. Making sure our children are healthy.
Thank you, Candidate Hunter. Thank you. All right. Candidate Moreno.
Yes, thank you. So during my first 100 days, I'll tell you this, I'm going to be laser focused in on making sure that we get the city services right, the basic city services, making sure we get a streets program going on, making sure we get the street lights, finally to stay on, making sure the traffic lights aren't blinking, making sure that all of the departments are working in urgent coordination and collaboration to give you the city services that you deserve. At the same time, that's when I'm going to start also making sure that New Orleans East knows that I have a team in place in my administration that's going to be solely focused on the success of New Orleans East. Like I mentioned before, making sure that you have the right type of development, making sure that they're focusing in on business retention, making sure that you have the quality of life issues that you deserve being met. But then, let's also talk about, the fact that safety and permits, one of the things that is really hindering business in our city is the fact that this department is a hurdle to starting businesses. We hear it all the time from across the city, including in New Orleans East. But when I get that City Hall annex put in New Orleans East, you'll have the city services there as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Thank you. All right. Candidate Harris Thomas.
Yes, and my first 100 days,
I think our connection is
running. I mean, that our elderly people are good. It's like we're not talking about the elderly, the people who don't have any kids, any grand kids. I would like to make sure those first 90 days that everything is straight in their homes with them. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start off with them so they can live a quality life. And then I'm sure all the homeless people I see by the Singer Theater and by Loyola's Library, especially at 10 o'clock at night to 4, 5, 6 in the morning, if they have that like that downtown, I could just imagine how the ninth ward look. I will make sure we don't have anyone sleeping on the streets in the ninth ward, in addition to all of the city. Whatever they did for the Super Bowl and Taylor Swift, I'm gonna put that in place immediately to house my elderly people. And of course, I'm gonna
Thank you, Candidate Morris. Okay. Candidate Morris.
Thank you for the question. We talked about disconnect, and my plan calls for also opening a government center in the New Orleans East and in the Ninth Ward, and all the front-facing city services will be available to them. In that space, though, there will be an Office of Economic Development small business analyst that'll be available to individuals that are looking to start a small business and receive some education on how to do that properly. There's not much help. I myself have started some small businesses, and it was kind of trial and error as you go, right? And that office will be there to aid you. But also, we're going to connect you as far as transportation. My plan calls for the expansion of the streetcar line down the St. Charles Avenue line, all the way to the Parish line, but also expanding the streetcar down Chef to Highway to connect our people, excuse me, with opportunity.
Thank you. Candidate Thomas.
And this is one that I've been lecturing on for quite some time. New Orleans East and the Lower Ninth Ward, if it stood alone, would be the 6th or 7th largest city in the state. It should be represented in city services, in nonprofits, in opportunity. But we've missed the boat post-Katrina. Post-Katrina, there was a major demographic shift. There were 2 communities that could absorb the population that lived downtown near the core of the city because they had multi-unit complexes, Algiers and New Orleans East. But guess what happened? The services didn't relocate. Every nonprofit, every agency, state or city agency that serviced those people, guess what they did? They watched their service population move across the river and move across the industrial canal, but they stayed downtown. A mayor needs to get all of those agencies in a room, state, local, government, nonprofits, and said, how do we establish satellite offices post-Katrina to deal with the population that shifted, that in many cases they can't catch the bus to you, they don't have a car to get to you, but they still need you. That's what I'd do my first 100 days.
Thank you. Candidate Duplessis.
The people of New Orleans East and the Lower Ninth Ward feel neglected and as though their services haven't been the same and that it hasn't been equitable. And that's because they haven't been. This is not a made up thing. This is the reality. I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. Therefore, in my first 100 days, I would put a supercharged focus on doing an audit around how we can identify blight and go, just crazy in terms of dealing with blight reduction. I think that's a key issue. Cleanliness, safetyness, and efficiency. Cleanliness, safetyness, and efficiency. That's what the people want. That's what the people deserve. So I would focus primarily on a blight reduction strategy in New Orleans East because we need to deal with that issue. We got to deal with it immediately. I think we do those things. We make it more attractive for the other types of investments we've talked about throughout this call. I've heard a lot of talk around creating annexes and additional buildings and city hall satellites and all these other things. But right now, City Hall isn't working.
Thank you.
How are we going to make the City Hall annex work in New Orleans East?
Thank you for your response. Thank you. Candidate Carter.
How are we going to get city services to New Orleans East in 90 days? We're going to use Joe Brown and Sanchez as hubs until we can build some with community input and see where they want it and what services they want. That's how we're going to do it. And I'm glad you asked the question, because I have put out there that in my first 90 days, I want a report to the shareholders of the city of New Orleans, our residents. We have not been told the truth, and every department needs to come forward, matching and not in silo with the director, in conjunction with experts and residents and community activists, to put forth a report. Every last department, I want to be responsible to the residents of New Orleans. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to clean this slate. We're going to tell the truth, and then we're going to walk with vision. And those people who are most affected in the areas across the board are going to be heard, because we have not been hearing the people, and we have not been hearing New Orleans East. So I want to hear from you. I want to have regular teletown halls. I want to know what you want, and I want to meet your needs, and we're going to do it together.
Thank you, Candidate Carter. Thank you all. We are approaching the end of our scheduled time. On behalf of my co-moderator, Kiva Landrum, it has been an honor to facilitate this very important discussion. We'll now turn over the virtual mic to Dawn Hebert, co-founder of Voters East of the Industrial Canal.
I want to again thank everyone for participating tonight, and I want to especially thank our moderators, Sion and Kiva. Thank you so much for participating. Now I want to introduce Shawan Renard for announcements on the poll results and on key dates for the upcoming forums and elections. Again, thank you very much. Shawan.
Good evening, and thank you, Dawn, and thanks to all of the candidates who joined us tonight. So we're going to share on the screen some important dates that we just want to share with our viewers who are looking online. And as a reminder to everyone that Election Day is October the 11th. We also have 3 ways that citizens can vote. Remember, there's early voting, and early voting takes place September 27th through October 4th. And it excludes Sunday. So you can vote early or you can vote in person on Election Day. The next slide that we'll share with you is opportunities to make sure that you're registered to vote. So if you have not registered and you're watching us, or you know someone who has not, there are a number of ways that they can register. In-person registration, the deadline is September 10th, 2025, or you can also register via Go Vote, which is online, through September 20th, so that you would be eligible to vote in the upcoming election. The deadline, you can also vote absenteeism, and there's a few ways that you can do that. But the deadline to request your ballot is October 7th, 2025. And the deadline for the register of voters to receive those absentee ballots is, it has to be in their office by October 10th, 2025. There is an additional deadline for military and overseas voters, so make sure that you get that information from the Register of Voters office. And we have that information that's next that we can share with you. The Register of Voters office is located at City Hall. Well, before we go to that slide, if you are going to find yourself, if you're a senior citizen, you can vote absentee by just requesting a ballot. There are opportunities that if you are disabled, if you're a student who's voting and you are not going to be in the parish or in Orleans Parish, if you're attending away from school, you can vote absentee. Overseas, in the military, if you're going to be temporarily away from New Orleans on Election Day, you can also vote absentee. If you're in the clergy, if you're incarcerated and you have not been convicted of that felony, you can also vote. So there's an opportunity to vote there. And also, if you're doing jury duty, hospital stay, or any other emergency situation, you have an opportunity to vote in this election, and we encourage everyone to do so. Now, how do you get those ballots? That's the next slide. You can request those ballots through Go Vote, or you can also request those absentee ballots through the registrar's office at City Hall. And we want to remind you and invite you to join us again tomorrow, where we are going to hear from the candidates who have offered their services to us for District D. We also have a forum for District E. We're going to do and host both the City Council at Large candidates, along with the sheriffs and the assessors. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we start at 6:30, and we invite you to join us back for the forum. And again, we thank the candidates who are running for mayor and We look forward to hearing more from you on different settings, and we hope that citizens will join us and decide who they're going to vote for. And that concludes my portion. And again, thank you guys. Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry. We're going to do the poll results. So I'm going to turn it over to Corinne, and she's going to share the poll results that took place via the Zoom link and also the online link.
Thank you, Shawan. Thank you, everyone. So here are the results. We're going to go over and show you the results. So just so you all know, we had an average of 250 people viewing live on the Zoom, on the YouTube. And here are the results. I think we had a total of 154 people to respond. And I'm just going to go through the slides and you can see. And then I'm not going to talk it through, but I'm just going to go ahead and forward over.
Could you expand that so it's readable, please?
Thank you all. The results will be published in a more aesthetically pleasing report, and we will post it on our social media platforms. Dawn, do you have any last words for closeout?
No, like I said, I want to thank everyone and I commend you all for running for mayor. So I wish you the best of luck in this endeavor, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from you in the